Now then, whilst most people filled their free time throughout the pandemic baking banana bread and making TikToks, our next guests went down a slightly different path. After losing their jobs, they decided to make a living by sex camming, streaming their sex lives over the internet for everyone to see.
Well, Kayla and Jack, who feature in Sex Actually, a docuseries looking at society's perception of sex, which starts tonight on Channel 4. Join us in the studio now, and welcome to both of you. Thank you for being here today. So this was not something you were into before you met. I mean, Kayla, slightly, you'd been doing a bit of webcamming before, and we'll come to that. But how did you meet, first of all?
I was working in Subway at the time.
Yeah.
And I come in for a bit of food, and straight away we felt that chemistry and hit it off.
Right.
You were a decorator.
Yeah, I was a decorator at the time. I was helping a friend out with a couple of things, and like you say, we made eye contact, and we knew from there.
And so you become a couple.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic strikes, and everyone's lives change. And so they obviously said, right, OK, you're on furlough, and how do you fill your time? Now, there's a big jump, obviously, from where we all found ourselves. Thankfully, we were in here. We were on the telly, but not quite the same as you.
Yeah.
So many people looked at other resources. You went down a completely different route. How did you get there, and how do you sell that idea to each other?
I think it was because I did it in the past, but that was short-lived because it wasn't the right time for me. So when I was in the relationship with Jack, and we're 3 months in, I was like, I think it's time to tell him, obviously what I'd done in the past. It's a big step in our relationship, and I didn't want to hide it from him. Yeah. So then I told him, and he had we both suggested, obviously because of lockdown, maybe we should try it again, and obviously being there with each other.
So, Jack, but that was your idea, to do this as a couple.
It was, I think, yeah, but I think Kayla started hers up, and she had maybe been going for about 2 months to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And obviously we would have sex off camera after the show.
Yeah.
And it just became that thing of saying, well, maybe somebody wants to view it and somebody wants to watch her. The same way she was working, yeah, and little did we know that it took off massively.
So explain how it works. I mean, obviously daytime television, but the idea is that you are on camera, you are having sex together, and somebody will put in requests. There's either one person who's watching, or there can be up to how many people?
Up to 30, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a 30.
Up to 30. And do they make suggestions? Do they ask you to do something?
Well, it can be varied. You can get silent callers. You can have people who have requests. So everybody's a little bit different when you're on there.
Yeah.
Do you know who they are?
No.
We do have a couple of regulars, which obviously we know who they are through the name that we see each week, each day.
Yeah. But
not on a personal level.
So how do you make money out of this? Because you make a lot of money out of this.
Yeah. It's basically they pay per minute to view what we do. Then they're more than fine to put in a request or anything which they want to see. As long as we're happy to do it with each other, then we're happy to do it for them, you know?
And that's the key, because there are certain things that you've been asked to do, Kayla, that you are not happy with.
Yeah, I feel like you can get a request and it maybe isn't for you.
Yeah, but just say, oh, just don't do that, or...
Yeah.
And then they'll just go somewhere else. There's plenty of market for people, on the site.
Yeah.
Who do different things, do you know what I mean?
So when you're doing something like that in public, on demand, fulfilling people's wishes, prepared as far as you're prepared to go, what does that do to your own relationship, your own sex life?
Well, I think we'd try to keep it separated from our own sex life. Obviously, we use another alter ego when we go on there. I'm J and she's Foxy Red. And we try and keep that separate from where we stand in the relationship. We know when we go to work, we go into work as J, she goes in as Foxy Red, but when we come out, we're simply Kayla and Jack again.
But once you've had an evening for however long that lasted, and you've performed...
Yeah, we've done, yeah.
Trying to find the word.
How can you be romantic afterwards? Because you sort of done that,
because
cup of tea in bed.
Romantics, it just happens in the moment, do you know what I mean? When we're chilling, or do you know what I mean?
Doesn't it make sex feel like work, though? Doesn't it make, when you're in a couple and you just go, oh, God, that feels like work?
Sex is work, but then when we're with each other, we know that when it's just me and Kayla, we can devote 100% of my attention to her, and she
So
can
it's different.
devote 100% of her attention
What about if
to
you've
me.
had an argument
Yeah.
and then you suddenly got a webcam appointment and you're like, oh my God,
Yeah,
now I've got to do this.
Oh, literally
It's
switch
happened
on to
before.
this. It's
Laundry
switch on.
out.
That's the good thing about it, is that we can like switch on and off. Like,
Yeah, then obviously if you were in that bad of a situation, you wouldn't answer the call. There's always time. You only do what you feel comfortable doing it, and knowing that you're both ready to turn the camera on. You know?
So, the thing is with something like this is, you know, it's all well and good, and you've certainly financed yourselves through lockdown, found another way to make money, good money. But then, of course, you've got family and friends and things that you've got to either explain it to or who find out what you're doing.
Yeah.
Now, I think there's been a different reaction from both of your families.
yeah.
So, as far as you're concerned, Jack, what's the reaction been like from your family?
My family are quite open-minded. I've got a couple of brothers, and they've said strictly that they wouldn't do it. They say it's really not something for them. But then my mother's obviously quite protective, and she's protective over Kayla. And people, I think, just once they see we're doing happy, they can change their opinion about it. And it's really hard to know what goes into it. I mean, when I started, I knew nothing about it, so I'm more than happy to tell them.
Yeah.
You know? And I feel like the better they see both we're doing, they accept it.
So a lot of support there, but not so much from your side, Kayla.
Yeah, I think it was because obviously it's a private thing. Like, I don't want to. My family is kind of big, and like telling everyone, it's not really a thing you go around telling your family. Do you know what I mean? And explaining every single thing what you do, and then.
But the trouble is with something like that is that you may not want to tell your family, but because this is public, they can find out.
Now it was public, but before Channel 4 asked to go on it, literally no one even knew. Like, it was only because I had confided in like a family member, and then the family member told all my family, so it wasn't like, do you know what I mean? It was private, but then when Channel 4 asked us to come on the documentary, that would be a good opportunity to show my family.
It's difficult. I've got two
as well.
daughters, so I mean, it's difficult for a dad, isn't it?
Yes,
And
that's
been
what
a
the
tough
hardest thing for, like, my dad, do you know what I mean? But he's supportive in us, and
Yeah.
I think he sees how good you do, and he sees how good his daughter does when she's not at work, and sees what happiness that comes from what we do. So I think for a father to see his daughter happier than she's ever been in life is a good feeling. He may
The
not.
thing is, I think that, and actually this is kind of what the documentary is exploring, isn't it? It's sort of our relationship with sex in a way, how we view it, how we talk about it, how we discuss it, how taboo it is, how private we are about it, how, in your case, how open you are about it. And this is Louis Through's producing this, Alice Levine is hosting it. Yeah. And for you, even this was a new experience because Alice came into the room and watched you have sex in front of her. I mean, this wasn't even webcamming, this was in the same room. So for you were sort of exploring new things as well.
yes.
Yeah, but I think we realised from doing it as a couple and doing it singly that what you hear on the other side of the door isn't necessarily what's happening. So the best way for us to show Alice and to show the country what we do is to actually invite them in, and they can see for themselves rather than assume what we do. You know.
Yeah, fair enough.
This is obviously, you can do this for a certain amount of time, but I'm assuming you've got plans to do other things. What are you going to do with this?
Hopefully, in the future, like, create a space for, like, people. Like me, when I was 18, I didn't have, like, support. Like, there's people that don't have anyone out there that would want to get into this that don't have the financial, like, starting point, like all the setup and stuff like that. I would love to create like a studio where people can just come and have a workspace if they wanted to do it.
And also, it's a business, I presume. So you are having to pay tax. You are having to. There's a lot of side that you need to be able to know and understand. If you're going into this, you've got to do it properly.
For being me young, going from Subway, like, just like being self-employed, it's basically such a massive step for me.
So I take it you have no plans to go back to Subway?
For £6.10 an hour, I don't think.
Maybe for a sandwich.
Thank you very much indeed. I hope the family's okay in the end. And that documentary is called Sex Actually. It's tonight at 10 on Channel 4. Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Very much.